Sunset Rescue. The setting sun bled across the western expanse, igniting the mesas with hues of ember and amethyst as Dusty urged Diablo toward home. The quarter horse, usually spirited, moved with a weary shuffle, mirroring Dusty's own exhaustion after a day wrestling with busted fences and a calf laid low by infection. Aching for a hot meal and silence, he rounded a bend in the rutted track, and a jarring note of color snagged his attention. Against the drab monotony of the barbed wire, a splash of faded blue stood out. He narrowed his gaze. A figure, perhaps? He touched his heels to Diablo's flanks, his hand instinctively drifting to the Winchester nestled in its scabbard. As they closed the distance, the shape solidified, a young woman secured to the fence. Baling twine bit into her wrists and ankles, binding her to the rough-hewn posts. She slumped against the wood, head lolling, a picture of dejection. Her dress, once blue, was now a patchwork of rips and grime, mirroring the dust that muted her skin and tangled in her hair. The ebbing sunlight painted the scene in stark, unsettling shadows. He dismounted swiftly, rifle in hand, approaching with caution. "Evenin'," he rumbled, his voice raspy from disuse. "You need help?" Her head shot up, eyes darting around with a skittish alertness before fixing on him. "Who's asking?" she demanded, her voice a dry croak. "Dusty Rivers. This is my spread." He eased the rifle slightly, but kept it close. "What happened out here?" "None of your concern," she muttered, testing the strength of her bonds. "Just cut me loose." Holstering the rifle, he knelt beside her. The twine was cinched tight, leaving angry red welts. "Hold still," he murmured, producing his pocket knife. She flinched at his touch, but didn't resist. With practiced care, he severed the bindings. Her wrists were raw and abraded. He worked on the knots around her ankles, freeing them as well. Rubbing her abused skin, her gaze remained fixed on him, laced with distrust. "Why bother? Didn't seem right, leaving you like that," he answered, his tone gravelly. He rose, offering a calloused hand. "Name's Dusty, and yours." A moment of hesitation hung in the air before she accepted his grip. Her grasp was surprisingly firm. "Lily," she offered, her voice a bare exhalation. "Lily Mae Johnson." He hauled her to her feet. She faltered, and he instinctively steadied her with a hand on her arm. She was taller than he'd initially gauged, near 5'8", and possessed a lean strength. "Who did this, Lily?" he inquired. Her face hardened into a mask of bitterness. "My pa," she spat, the word laced with venom. "Got himself liquored up. Said I was nothing but a burden." Dusty's jaw clenched. He was intimately acquainted with the wreckage a drunken parent could leave behind. "Where were you headed?" "Nowhere," she replied, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, quickly suppressed. "He took everything. Just left me." Twilight had deepened, painting the sky in indigo brushstrokes, and the air carried a growing bite. He knew she couldn't stay there. "Come on." He gestured toward Diablo. "I'll take you to the ranch. Bed you down for the night." Lily regarded him with wary suspicion. "And why would you do that?" Dusty shrugged, a gesture of nonchalance. "Like I said, didn't sit right, leaving you out here." He kept silent about the flicker of something deeper, a forgotten feeling, a nascent sense of responsibility. Helping her onto Diablo, he settled her in front of him. Her body was stiff and unyielding against his back rigid. He guided Diablo at a deliberate pace towards the distant glow of the ranch house, the only sound the rhythmic thud of the horse's hooves. The ranch house stood as a testament to resilience, constructed from sun-bleached wood and sturdy stone. A solitary lamp cast a welcoming glow into the encroaching darkness. Dusty dismounted and aided Lily to the ground. "Ain't much," he said, gesturing towards the structure, "but it's home." Her gaze shifted from the house back to him. "Thank you," she said, her voice still guarded, but laced with a hint of softness. He ushered her inside. The interior was Spartan, with a roughly hewn table and chairs occupying the main room, a stone fireplace providing warmth, and a doorway leading to the private space. The air held the scent of dry earth and lingering wood smoke. "I'll get some coffee brewing," he said, moving toward the stove, "and see if I can scare up some beans and bacon." Lily stood awkwardly in the center of the room, uncertain. "I can help," she volunteered. Dusty glanced back, surprised. "You don't have to." "I want to," she said, her voice resolute. "I hate feeling useless." He nodded curtly. "All right, set the table, then." As they worked in companionable silence, a fragile semblance of order settled over the room. The aroma of brewing coffee permeated the air, and the crackling fire banished the encroaching chill. Dusty observed Lily from the corner of his eye. Her movements possessed a quiet competence, hinting at a life shaped by toil. After the meal, Dusty directed Lily to the spare room. It was small and unadorned, furnished with a simple cot and a wooden trunk. "Don't have much," he confessed, "but you're welcome to stay as long as you need." Lily surveyed the room, her expression inscrutable. "Thank you," she repeated. Dusty lingered at the doorway. "There's a wash basin and water in the corner, and some clean clothes in the chest. They're old, but they're clean." He left her to her solitude and returned to the main room. Settling by the hearth, he watched the flames dance. He couldn't fully explain why he'd brought her here. He didn't need the aggravation. Yet, something about her, her bruised strength, her exposed vulnerability, had resonated deep within him. He sighed and settled back in his chair. It promised to be a long night, and he sensed that the familiar rhythm of his life had been irrevocably altered. Sanctuary at the ranch. The truck bucked and swayed along the rutted track, each lurch a fresh assault on Lily's aching muscles. A plume of ochre dust trailed behind, dulling the green of the sparse vegetation. The sunset blazed across the horizon, a vibrant masterpiece of vermilion and magenta that only deepened the throb in her shoulder where the rope had chafed. She chanced to look at Dusty. His expression was granite, gaze unwavering on the road. He'd offered little beyond gruff directions, and the ride itself since cutting her bonds. Lily held her tongue. Words felt precarious, easily broken, and she lacked the strength for repair work. At long last, the track gave way to a small clearing. A humble, time-worn ranch house stood etched against the twilight, a compact barn and corral nestled close by. A windmill groaned in the breeze, its lonesome cadence drifting across the open expanse. "This is it," Dusty announced, killing the engine. The abrupt silence was almost a physical weight. Lily unfolded herself from the cab, her legs stiff and resistant. The air carried the tang of parched earth and sage, a scent both alien and strangely welcoming. She scanned the property, a mix of trepidation and nascent hope fluttering within her. It wasn't much, but it was a universe removed from the degradation and fear she'd endured. Dusty guided her to the house, unlocking the entrance with a key fished from his jeans. Inside, the space was simple, sparsely adorned yet clean. A well-worn leather couch faced a stone hearth, flanked by a pair of armchairs. The air was cool, carrying a whisper of old fires. "Bathroom's that way," Dusty indicated, nodding towards a hallway. "I'll rustle up some grub." Lily nodded, appreciating the unspoken offer of solitude. She splashed water onto her face and hands in the cramped, chipped sink, scrubbing away the grime and the phantom sting of her father's wrath. The coolness was a balm, a miniature ritual of purification. When she emerged, Dusty was placing a plate on the small kitchen table, a generous slab of meatloaf, a mound of mashed potatoes, and a helping of green beans. Unpretentious, but sustaining. "Sit," he directed, his voice rough-edged, but not unkind. Lily hesitated, then eased into a chair. She hadn't registered the depth of her hunger until the aroma of the food permeated the air. She ate deliberately at first, relishing each mouthful, then with mounting urgency as her appetite took over. Dusty observed her in silence, his face an enigma. He refilled her water glass when it was empty. When she finished, he cleared the plate and rinsed it. "Spare rooms down the hall," he stated, drying his hands on a dish towel. "Fresh linens on the bed. You can crash there." He led her to a small room containing a narrow bed, a plain dresser, and a little window overlooking the corral. The sheets, though faded, were clean, and a thick, folded quilt rested at the bed's foot. "I'll leave you to it," Dusty said, pausing at the threshold. "Sleep tight." Lily nodded, her throat constricted. "Thank you," she rasped. He offered a curt nod in return and quietly shut the door. Lily stood motionless, feeling oddly unmoored. She stroked the quilt's smooth cotton. It wasn't much, but it was hers at least for the night. Shedding her clothes, she quickly donned the oversized t-shirt Dusty had provided. It carried his scent, a blend of horses, leather, and something indefinable. She slid into bed, drawing the quilt around her. The mattress, lumpy and uneven, felt like the most luxurious surface she'd ever known. Exhaustion pulled her under, a welcome oblivion. She gazed at the ceiling, listening to the old house's sighs and murmurs, the distant lament of a coyote. Despite the unfamiliarity of her surroundings, despite the uncertainty stretching before her, a quiet calm settled in. She was safe for this moment, sheltered, protected. As sleep claimed her, a single hope echoed in her mind. Perhaps, just perhaps, a new life could begin here. Whispers of the past. The silence hung, thick as wool, as Lily assisted Dusty with the supper debris. He funneled the scraps into a bucket for the pigs, a practiced motion honed by countless evenings. Lily stacked dishes, their delicate chimes a counterpoint to the hearth's ravenous appetite. Returning from ashore, Dusty's face was a study in chiaroscuro from the dancing flames. A nod toward the worn armchairs invited her to sit. Coffee. Lily accepted, the promised warmth easing the steel bands around her shoulders. Though sparsely appointed, the ranch house radiated a genuine warmth. The ghost of cinnamon clung to the air, a fragrant echo of the pie she'd barely touched. Dusty filled 2 mugs, his calloused hands engulfing the crockery. Offering one to Lily, the heat bloomed against her chilled skin before he eased into the opposite chair, the leather groaning beneath him. Minutes ticked by, punctuated only by the fire's crackle and the distant lament of an owl. Finally, Lily stirred the quiet. "Thank you, Dusty, for everything you've done." A grunt was his only reply, his gaze riveted to the fire's capricious dance. Forget about it, but she couldn't. Needed to voice the burgeoning gratitude, the fragile sense of security she dared not fully embrace. Why? Why bring me here? He shifted, the question making him visibly uneasy. He swallowed coffee, the sound audible in the stillness. "Saw you drifting," he rumbled, his voice a low rasp. "Seemed like you needed a place to land." Lily offered a gentle scoff. "I'm not a stray, Dusty." His eyes flickered to hers, holding a glint of something indecipherable. "No," he conceded, the admission terse. A pause, then, "You reminded me of someone." "Who?" The word escaped as a breath. He returned his focus to the flames, lost to a distant memory. "Sarah, my wife, died 10 years back. Horse through her. She lay out there for hours." The words were extracted, each one a jagged fragment. Lily's heart winched. She knew that desolation, that deep well of grief. "I'm so sorry, Dusty." A shrug was his attempt at dismissal, but couldn't quite conceal the haunted look in his eyes. Loneliness had calcified into a part of him. Buoyed by a sudden impulse, Lily decided to offer a piece of her own history. Perhaps, just perhaps, it would lighten the atmosphere that weighed so heavily. "My mother wasn't much present. Had a fondness for the bottle. My dad, well, you witnessed that." Dusty nodded, his expression softening infinitesimally. "Foster homes mostly. Never planted roots long enough to call any place home. Took off when I was 16. Been just getting by since." She cradled the mug, drawing comfort from its warmth. "Never had anyone watching my back." A spark flew from the hearth, momentarily illuminating the room. The silence returned, altered this time. It was a shared quiet, born of empathy, of unspoken understanding. Dusty's voice, when he finally spoke, was softer than before. "Life can deal a mean hand." Lily nodded, tracing the mug's circumference. "Seems that way." Leaning forward, his elbows resting on his knees, he declared, but you got to play the card you're holding. Can't just give up. Lily met his gaze, surprised by its intensity. Easier said than done. Maybe, he allowed. But you're still drawing breath. That's got to count for something. They sat for a while longer, the fire gradually surrendering its heat. Their shared stories had formed a tentative bridge between them, spanning the abyss of their individual sorrows. Finally, Dusty rose, a symphony of creaks accompanying his movements. Time for sleep. Tomorrow will be on us soon enough. Lily mirrored his action. She felt a weariness that transcended the physical, a profound fatigue rooted in years of struggle. Yet, beneath the exhaustion, a delicate hope flickered. Perhaps, just perhaps, she had finally stumbled upon a haven. Dusty indicated a small room near the main area. That's yours. Bedding's in the chest. Thanks, Dusty. Hesitating, she added good night. Night, Lily. He turned and vanished into the shadows of his own bedroom. Lily entered her allocated space, the air still and cool. Sparsely decorated, it nonetheless offered a clean and inviting atmosphere. A patchwork quilt, its colors muted yet cheerful, lay at the bed's foot. Running her hand over the soft fabric, a lump constricted her throat. She changed quickly, slipping into the oversized t-shirt Dusty had offered. Crawling between the sheets, she couldn't dismiss the sensation of being observed, not in a threatening manner, but rather with a protective watchfulness. She closed her eyes, the image of Dusty's lined face and kindly gaze imprinted on her mind. For the first time in years, Lily drifted into slumber untroubled by nightmares. The echoes of the past still lingered, but fainter now, muted by the quiet promise of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could begin again here, on this isolated ranch, alongside this taciturn, lonely cowboy. Maybe, just maybe, she had found a home at last. Finding purpose. The morning sun, a painter of golden hues, splashed across Lily's face as she awoke. The unfamiliar creaks and groans of the old ranch house were a stark contrast to the sterile silence of foster homes. A hesitant smile touched her lips. This felt different. Dusty was already gone. A note on the kitchen table, weighted down by a horseshoe, read, "Chores. Eat something." Beside it sat a plate covered with a napkin, revealing a stack of pancakes. They were thick and slightly burnt around the edges, but Lily ate them with gusto, the simple gesture a balm to her perpetually empty stomach. She found Dusty in the barn, mucking out stalls. The air hung thick with the scent of hay and manure, a smell she found surprisingly comforting. "Morning," she said, leaning against the doorway. Dusty straightened, wiping his brow with a forearm that looked like it was carved from oak. "Morning. Figured you'd still be asleep." "Nah, slept great. What can I do?" He gestured towards a coop teeming with clucking chickens. "They need feeding. Grain's in that bucket." Lily approached the coop cautiously. Chickens had always seemed pecky, but as she scattered the grain, watching them descend in a flurry of feathers, she felt a flicker of amusement. Their frantic pecking was almost comical. The rest of the morning passed in a similar rhythm. Lily swept the porch, weeded the small vegetable garden, and even attempted to mend a tear in one of Dusty's work shirts, though her stitches were far from perfect. Each task, however small, felt significant. She was contributing belonging. After lunch, Dusty surprised her. "Come on," he said, heading towards the corral. "I'll teach you to ride." Lily's heart leaped. She'd always dreamed of riding, of feeling the wind in her hair as she galloped across open fields. But dreams were for other people, not foster kids with nowhere to call home. He saddled a gentle-looking mare named Belle. The leather creaked as he helped Lily into the saddle, his hands surprisingly steady. "Easy now," he murmured, adjusting the stirrups. "Just relax." Relaxing proved harder than she thought. Belle was huge, her muscles rippling beneath Lily. But Dusty's calm instructions and Belle's gentle nature soon eased her fears. He walked alongside, guiding her, explaining how to hold the reins, how to shift her weight. By the end of the afternoon, Lily was walking Belle around the corral on her own, a grin splitting her face. The sun beat down, sweat trickled down her back, but she felt exhilarated. Free. As dusk settled, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Lily decided to cook dinner. She learned a few things in the various foster homes, mostly out of necessity. Rooting through the pantry, she found canned tomatoes, onions, garlic, and some dried pasta. It wasn't much, but she could make something. The aroma of simmering sauce filled the small house. Dusty sat at the kitchen table, whittling a piece of wood, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up as Lily placed a bowl of pasta in front of him. "Smells good," he said, his voice gruff. Lily watched him take a bite. His expression didn't change, but he kept eating. "It's just pasta," she said, trying to sound casual. "It's good pasta," he replied, finally meeting her gaze. "Thank you." After dinner, as they washed the dishes together in companionable silence, Lily realized something profound. She wasn't just filling her stomach. She was filling a void, a longing for purpose. Dusty, too, seemed different. The lines around his eyes seemed less harsh, his shoulders less burdened. The ranch, once a silent testament to loss, was slowly coming back to life. And Lily, the girl who had been left tied to a fence, was finally finding a place to belong. The return. A smudge on the horizon announced his arrival, a dirty promise growing larger by the second. Lily, perched on the corral fence, shielded her eyes, a cold weight settling in her gut. They'd been tending to Buck's scraped leg. Usually, the gelding was a picture of equine docility, but the approaching vehicle hijacked her attention. "Dusty," she breathed, her voice a mere thread. He rose from his crouched position, swiping grime from his hands. His gaze followed hers, his brow a tight question mark as he studied the oncoming machine. It was a battered, wheezing pickup, belching fumes and sounding like a wounded beast. A vehicle etched into her memory, a specter she'd hoped never to see again. Her breath caught. Impossible. Yet undeniably it was. The truck shuddered to a halt just beyond the ranch gate, the engine coughing out its last ragged breath before succumbing to silence. A gaunt figure unfolded himself from the cab, clothes creased and stained with life's less savory choices. Her father. Her heart slammed against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. The world seemed to contract, the comforting blend of hay and horse replaced by the sharp, metallic taste of dread. He wasn't supposed to come. He wouldn't dare. Lily May, the slurred command carried on the breeze, struck her like a physical blow. Dusty's calloused hand landed on her shoulder, a silent anchor. No words were spoken, yet his presence formed an unyielding bulwark against the rising panic. She slid from the fence, her legs unsteady beneath her. "Stay here," she managed, the words a shaky offering. He didn't protest, his gaze sharp and unwavering as she walked towards the gate. Leaning against the truck, he was a pathetic, disheveled caricature. Cheap whiskey and despair radiated from him like a noxious perfume. "Well, well," he rasped, a mockery of warmth in his tone. "Look what the cat dragged in." "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice flat and brittle as glass. She kept her distance, the gate a fragile barricade. "Come on, princess. Is that any way to greet your own flesh and blood?" He pushed off the truck, swaying precariously. "I missed you, sweetheart. Thought you might be missing me, too." Lily's lip curled in distaste. "Missed me? You left me tied to a fence." He waved it off with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "A minor misunderstanding. Water under the bridge, eh? Besides," he added, his gaze sweeping across the ranch with thinly veiled greed, "looks like you're doing all right for yourself. Got a little spare change kicking around? I'm a bit financially challenged." A surge of pure, unadulterated rage coursed through her veins. He hadn't changed. He never would. "Get off this property," she stated, her voice gaining steel. "I have nothing for you." Now, Lily May," he purred, menace lacing his voice. "Don't be like that. We're family. Family helps family." He shuffled closer, reaching for the gate. That's when Dusty moved. With a speed that defied his size, he materialized beside her, an immovable object. His eyes, usually pools of quiet serenity, now glittered with the cold, hard glint of granite. "She told you to leave," Dusty said, his voice a low rumble of thunder. The transformation was complete. The easygoing rancher had vanished, replaced by something altogether formidable. A flicker of surprise widened her father's eyes as he took in Dusty's imposing frame. "Who's this?" "That's irrelevant. What matters is you departing this ranch. Now." He straightened, puffing out his chest, a pathetic attempt at intimidation. "This is family business," he insisted, his voice lacking conviction. "Stay out of it." Dusty advanced, swinging the gate open and stepping onto the road, placing himself squarely between Lily and her tormentor. "She is my business." Her father recoiled, a spark of fear igniting in his eyes. He recognized a losing battle when he saw it. "Fine," he spat, his bravado crumbling like dry earth. "Have it your way. But you haven't seen the last of me." He leveled a glare at Lily, his face twisted with resentment. "You'll regret this, Lily May. You always do." He stumbled back to his truck, fumbling with the keys with shaking hands. The engine roared to life after an eternity of sputtering coughs, and he sped away, leaving behind a plume of dust and the lingering taste of dread. Lily stood transfixed, watching the truck shrink into the distance. The adrenaline coursing through her robbed her of strength, leaving her trembling. Dusty turned to her, his expression softening with concern. "You're right." She could only manage a nod. The fear remained, a frozen knot in her stomach, but now it was intertwined with something else. A deep sense of gratitude, of protection, that bloomed within her like a fragile flower. Dusty had defended her. He had shielded her. He reached out, his calloused hand closing gently over hers. His touch was rough-hewn, yet provided unexpected comfort. "He won't be back," he assured her, his voice unwavering. "I won't let him." Standing her ground. The air crackled with a silent threat as Lily's father, Merle, spat on the dusty ground between him and Dusty. "You think you're some kind of hero, huh? Standing up for this little stray?" He gestured dismissively at Lily. Dusty's jaw tightened, the only outward sign of the anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. He remained silent, his eyes fixed on Merle's. The silence seemed to fuel Merle's rage. He lunged, a clumsy, drunken swing aimed at Dusty's head. Dusty sidestepped with an agility that belied his size, grabbing Merle's wrist and twisting it behind his back. Merle roared, a mixture of pain and fury. "Get off me, you son of a—" Lily gasped, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wanted to run, to hide, but her feet remained rooted to the spot. The sight of Dusty, usually so reserved, now locked in a physical struggle, was both terrifying and strangely empowering. "Let him go, Dusty," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Dusty didn't respond, his grip on Merle's wrist tightening. "I said, let him go." Lily's voice gained strength, laced with a desperate plea. She knew Dusty was stronger, could easily overpower her father, but she didn't want to see him hurt, or worse, hurt Merle. Dusty hesitated, his gaze flicking to Lily's face. He saw the fear in her eyes, but also a flicker of something else, defiance. Slowly, he released Merle's wrist. Merle stumbled forward, rubbing his arm. "You think that changes anything?" He glared at Lily, his face red and contorted. "You're still my daughter. You owe me." "I don't owe you anything," Lily retorted, her voice surprisingly steady. She stepped forward, placing herself between Dusty and her father. "You haven't been a father to me in years. You left me tied to a fence like some animal." The memory, usually a source of shame, now fueled her anger. Merle scoffed. "I taught you everything you know. You taught me how to survive," Lily countered. "How to lie, how to steal, how to distrust everyone. But I'm learning new things now, things you could never teach me." She glanced at Dusty, a silent acknowledgement of the safety and stability he had offered her. Merle's eyes narrowed. "So, you're choosing him over your own flesh and blood?" "He's done more for me in a few weeks than you've done in my entire life," Lily stated firmly. "He treats me with respect. He listens to me. He doesn't leave me to rot." Merle took a step closer, his breath reeking of whiskey. "You'll regret this, girl. You'll come crawling back." "No, I won't," Lily said, her voice unwavering. "I'm staying here, with Dusty." The words hung in the air, a declaration of independence. Merle stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief and anger. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He simply glared at Lily and Dusty, then turned and stomped back towards the road, muttering under his breath. The setting sun cast long, distorted shadows behind him as he walked away. Lily watched him go, a mixture of relief and apprehension washing over her. She had finally stood up to him, finally asserted her own will. But she knew this might not be the end. He would likely return, perhaps with a new scheme, a new way to manipulate her. She turned to Dusty, her eyes searching his. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. For everything." Dusty nodded, his gaze softening. He didn't say anything, but his presence was enough. He stood beside her, a silent guardian, a promise of protection. The air, still thick with the residue of the confrontation, seemed to clear slightly. The scent of sage and dust mingled with the faint aroma of brewing coffee from the house, a comforting reminder of the simple life she was building here, a life she was determined to protect. The traveling salesman. The approaching dust cloud heralded his arrival well before the sputtering Model T. Ford shuddered to a halt before the ranch house. Dusty shielded his eyes, swiping perspiration from his forehead. Lily, idly sketching on the porch swing, paused, her curiosity piqued. The man who levered himself from the vehicle resembled a human scarecrow, all sharp angles and sun-baked canvas, a defiant mustache bristling from his face. His once fine suit bore the hallmarks of decades past, the tie undone to reveal a loud, floral shirt. "Howdy," he boomed, his voice almost comically loud against the vastness of the plains. "Earl Peterson's the name. Traveling salesman, peddler of quality goods, and even juicier news." A grin flashed, showcasing an ostentatious display of gold teeth. Dusty approached warily. "This ranch isn't on the market." Peterson chuckled, a dry, grating sound like pebbles grinding. "Didn't suppose it was. Just passing through. Though I must say, you've carved out a proper kingdom here." His gaze swept the land, noting the taut fences and the thriving cattle. "Rivers, isn't it? This your spread?" Dusty's posture tightened. "Could be." Peterson's grin broadened. "Dusty Rivers. Well, I'll be hornswoggled. Didn't recognize you right off. Last I saw, you were a green kid courting Sarah, May down in Willow Creek." A shadow fell over Dusty's face. The air seemed to stagnate, thick with unspoken history. Lily observed, her sketchbook forgotten, sensing the shift in the man's mood. Peterson, either insensitive or deliberately provocative, reached into his inner coat pocket. Speaking of Sarah May, he produced a time-worn envelope, yellowed and creased. "She asked me to deliver this, should I ever wander out this way. Said it was important." He extended the letter. Dusty stared, his hand hovering uncertainly. The postmark read Willow Creek, 2 decades gone. Sarah May, a name relegated to the deepest recesses of his memory, a name he hadn't dared utter in years. "Go on," Peterson pressed, a peculiar light in his eyes. "Don't tell me you're afraid of a little paper." Finally, Dusty took the letter, his fingers betraying a slight tremor. It felt as delicate as a dried petal. He glanced at Lily, seeking unspoken counsel. She nodded, a subtle gesture of encouragement. The tearing of the envelope echoed in the stillness of the afternoon. Unfolding the paper, his eyes darted over the faded script. "Dusty, if you're reading this, it means Earl kept his word, just like I knew he would. I didn't know any other way to reach you. Not after, well, what happened. There's something you should have known. Something I should have told you back then." His breath caught in his throat. He continued to read, his complexion paling with each word. "I was with child, Dusty. Your child. A boy. We named him Samuel. He's a good boy, Dusty. Strong, like his father. He works at the mill, trying to make an honest living. He doesn't know about you. I never told him. I'm not well, Dusty. My heart is failing. I don't have much time left. I just wanted you to know. He deserves to know his father. If you can, please find him. The letter ended abruptly, without a signature. The paper slipped from Dusty's grasp, landing softly on the dirt. He stared blankly ahead, his face a study in shock and disbelief. "Well, ain't that a pickle?" Peterson drawled. "A son, huh? After all this time?" He clapped Dusty on the shoulder, a familiar gesture that felt intrusive. "Life throws you curveballs, don't it?" Dusty remained silent, stunned. A son. Samuel. A son he never knew. A son deserving of a father. Sarah May, fading, alone. He looked at Lily, who watched him with a mixture of apprehension and deep concern. He saw the unasked questions swirling in her gaze. He retrieved the letter, clutching it tightly. He had a son, and Sarah May was gone. The carefully constructed barriers around his past had crumbled, ripped apart by a loquacious salesman and a fragile, yellowed letter. I need some air," he rasped, his voice thick with emotion. He turned and walked toward the barn, his shoulders bowed beneath the sudden weight of years, the past resurrected and bearing down upon him. Peterson watched him retreat, a strange, knowing smile twisting his lips. Turning to Lily, he said, his voice deceptively light, "Well, young lady, looks like things just got a whole lot more interesting around here. A journey for answers." The letter lay on the kitchen table, a yellowed artifact radiating an unspoken accusation. Dusty hadn't touched it since Peterson left, the salesman's Cheshire grin still imprinted on his memory like a brand. Lily, however, had read it and reread it, her brow furrowed in thought. "We need to find him, Dusty," she said, her voice soft but firm. Dusty ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. "I don't even know where to start, Lily. It's been 25 years. The letter says Sarah May moved to Oklahoma City," Lily pointed out, tapping the fragile paper. "It's a start." The decision made, a strange calm settled over Dusty. He moved with a purpose he hadn't felt in years, saddling 2 horses, packing supplies, bedrolls, dried meat, canteens, a map Lily had unearthed from a dusty box in the attic. Lily moved with him, anticipation tightening the lines around her mouth. He noticed she'd packed her sketching pad and pencils. By dawn, they were riding east, the rising sun painting the Oklahoma plains in hues of golden rose. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of sage and damp earth. Dusty rode in silence, his gaze fixed on the horizon, the weight of the past heavy on his shoulders. Lily, sensing his turmoil, didn't press him. She knew he needed time. The journey was arduous. The landscape was unforgiving, a seemingly endless expanse of rolling hills and scrubland. The sun beat down mercilessly, turning the air thick and heavy. They stopped at midday to rest the horses in the shade of a lone cottonwood tree, sharing a meager lunch of dried beef and hardtack. "Oklahoma City is a big place," Dusty finally said, breaking the silence. "Finding him will be like finding a needle in a haystack." "We'll start with Sarah May," Lily replied, her eyes determined. Someone must remember her. They reached the outskirts of Oklahoma City late the next day, the sprawling metropolis a stark contrast to the quiet solitude of the ranch. The air was thick with the smell of exhaust and the cacophony of city noise. They found a small, family-run motel on the edge of town, a place that looked like it had seen better days. The next morning, they began their search. They started in the older neighborhoods, the ones with tree-lined streets and houses with peeling paint, places where memories lingered. They asked anyone who would listen, shopkeepers, elderly women tending their gardens, kids playing in the streets, if they remembered a Sarah May. Most shook their heads, their faces blank. Some offered vague recollections, but nothing concrete. Days blurred into a frustrating routine of dead ends and false leads. Dusty's hope began to dwindle, replaced by a familiar sense of despair. He started to believe this was a fool's errand, a reckless chase after a ghost. One afternoon, as they were about to give up for the day, Lily spotted a small antique shop tucked away on a quiet side street. A bell jingled as they entered, announcing their arrival. An elderly woman with silver hair piled high on her head looked up from behind the counter, her eyes magnified by thick glasses. "Can I help you, dear?" she asked, her voice raspy but kind. Lily stepped forward, pulling out the faded letter. We're looking for information about a woman named Sarah May. She lived in Oklahoma City about 25 years ago. The woman took the letter, her gaze lingering on the name. A flicker of recognition crossed her face. Sarah May, she murmured. Yes, I remember her. She used to come in here. Liked to look at the old jewelry. Had a real eye for it, she did. Dusty's heart leaped in his chest. Do you know where she lived? Or if she had a son? The woman frowned, thinking. She lived over on Elm Street, in that little blue house. And yes, she said slowly, I remember her being pregnant. A few months later, she stopped coming in. I always wondered what happened to her. Elm Street. It was a lead, the first real lead they had. As they thanked the woman and left the shop, Dusty felt a surge of hope, fragile but undeniable. Lily squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with encouragement. We're getting closer, Dusty, she said. I can feel it. They found Elm Street easily enough. The blue house, however, was gone. In its place stood a modern apartment building, its sterile facade a stark contrast to the memory of Sarah May that the antique shop woman carried. Disappointment washed over Dusty, threatening to extinguish the flicker of hope that had ignited within him. Lily, however, refused to be deterred. She approached a young woman sitting on a bench outside the apartment building, reading a book. Excuse me, she said politely. Do you know anything about the history of this building? Or what used to be here before it was built? The young woman looked up, her eyes curious. I think there used to be an old house here, she said. My grandmother lived in this neighborhood her whole life. She might know something. Her name is Martha. She lives in the nursing home down the street. A new family. Elm Street offered little charm. A smattering of humble dwellings, some showing the wear of time, others impeccably maintained, bordered the still road. The air, thick and sweet, carried the mingled perfumes of honeysuckle and fresh-cut grass. Dusty crept along, his gaze latching onto each numbered house, his grip tight on the steering wheel. Number 34, Lily breathed, rechecking the crumpled note. The cottage, painted a washed-out cerulean, boasted a porch swing idly rocking in the gentle air. A battered Ford pickup, its cargo bed overflowing with hay, occupied the drive. Dusty parked, silencing the engine. A young man labored at the fence, his back presented to the approaching truck. He wore a faded denim shirt, each movement efficient, precise. Dusty's breath hitched, a knot constricting his throat. That's him. Lily squeezed his hand, her eyes reflecting both worry and encouragement. Go on. Gravel crunched under Dusty's boots as he approached. The young man turned, wiping his brow with a calloused hand. He possessed Dusty's eyes, those same deep-set pools of brown, the same quiet intensity simmering beneath the surface. Can I help you? He asked, his voice a polite rumble. For a timeless moment, Dusty remained mute. The years dissolved, leaving him standing before the son he never knew existed. No practiced speeches, no carefully constructed scenarios prepared him for this reality. He managed a simple query. Are you Peterson? The young man's brow furrowed. Yeah, Pete Peterson. You with collections. Dusty shook his head. My name is Dusty Rivers. I knew your mother. A flicker of confusion crossed Pete's features, quickly replaced by something akin to recognition. Sarah May. Dusty nodded, his heart hammering against his ribs. Pete fixed him with an intense stare, his expression an enigma. Dropping the hammer, he stepped toward Dusty. What do you want? I wanted to meet you, Dusty confessed, his voice roughened with emotion. I didn't know about you until recently. Pete scrutinized him, his gaze probing, questioning. You're my father. Dusty nodded, wordless. Silence hung between them, heavy as a humid summer sky. Finally, Pete exhaled a long, slow breath. Well, I'll be damned. He raked a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that resonated with a haunting familiarity. I guess. I always wondered. Lily, who had observed the exchange from the truck, slowly ambled closer. Pete shifted his gaze to her, an unspoken question in his eyes. This is Lily, Dusty introduced, his voice gaining strength. She's a friend. Pete nodded, offering a brief, tentative smile. Nice to meet you, Lily. Likewise, Pete, Lily replied, her tone warm and genuine. That day unfurled into a lengthy conversation. Dusty and Pete perched on the porch swing. Dusty recounted tales of the ranch, of Lily, of the fateful letter. Pete spoke of his own life, of growing up nurtured by his grandmother, of the ranch where he found employment. He shared Dusty's quiet nature, yet emanated an undeniable warmth, a genuine kindness. As twilight painted the sky with strokes of fire and lavender, Dusty extended an invitation. Why not come back to the ranch with us, Pete? Just for a spell. Get to know each other. Pete hesitated, his gaze lingering on the humble dwelling. I don't know, Dusty. I've got responsibilities here. We can sort it out, Dusty urged. Just give it a chance. After a moment's consideration, Pete relented. He packed a meager bag, bid farewell to his employer, and joined Dusty in the truck. As they departed Elm Street, Dusty stole a glance at Pete, a wave of profound emotion engulfing him. He had a son unearthed from the depths of the past. The journey back to the ranch unfolded in silence, punctuated by unspoken thoughts and fragile hopes. As they entered the driveway, a chorus of barks erupted from the awaiting dogs, tails whipping the air. Lily emerged from the cab, stretching with a radiant smile. Welcome home, Pete, she greeted with heartfelt sincerity. Pete surveyed his surroundings, absorbing the expansive fields, the solid barn, the tranquil beauty of the ranch land. A faint smile graced his lips. It's good to be here. That evening, they gathered around the kitchen table, sharing a modest meal of stew and cornbread. The air hummed with a mix of awkwardness and burgeoning warmth. Dusty observed Lily and Pete engaging in conversation, their laughter intermingling as they unearthed shared passions for horses and the land. He watched, and a sense of profound peace settled over him. He had discovered his son, and in an unexpected twist, he had found belonging. It wasn't the family he once envisioned, yet it was his. And for the first time in years, a glimmer of optimism sparked within Dusty's heart.